Hello everybody, Hare Krishna, welcome back. As you know, we are on ABC series. We've done a number of the letters. We're up to F. So we're going to do F today. And the word of the day, obviously starting with F, is the word faith. So we'll talk a little bit about faith. So firstly, the prime idea that I wanted to get across is that actually everybody has faith. Now, of course, if you're a spiritual person, you have faith in the presence of a divine being, the presence of Krishna, the presence of Allah, the presence of God, the presence of Jehovah. You have faith in that. But even if you are an atheist, you still have faith. You can't avoid having faith, because to be an atheist means to have faith in the non-existence of God. So you're still having faith. Faith in the non-existence of God. In our daily lives, we exhibit faith all the time. If you climb up a step ladder to do some painting, you don't analyze every step and check it out first. You have faith in the designers of that ladder that it will hold your weight, and you just get on and climb up. Some other examples of faith that I'd like to talk to you about come from everyday life. The thing is, with faith, there's two ways to get it. One can get faith through experience. It is through experience of many, many times that you've been on a ladder that you have faith. So you get faith through experience, but there is another way to get faith, and that is through knowledge. Now, let's go to my example. So when my daughter was very small, she had a tremendous fear of the toilet. Not the toilet itself per se, but her fear was that somehow she would go down the toilet, never to return. Somehow it was going to take her down that black hole, and she was never going to come back. And this fear was quite severe. And over time, through experience, although in the beginning I had to hold her, or she'd have to hold on some solid object, over time, through experience, she began to have faith that it wasn't going to take her down the big black hole. So that was through experience that she got that faith. But there's another way to get that faith. If her brain was up to the job, we could have done some mathematical calculations. We could have calculated the average diameter of the body and compare it to the diameter of the hole, and mathematically prove through knowledge that it cannot possibly fit. And that could have been another way to get faith that you were safe. If you go to the top of the Sky Tower in Auckland, it's very high up, there is a part of the floor which is made of glass. Now, maybe through walking over that glass, maybe in the beginning very worried that it might crack and you'd plummet to your death. So maybe in the beginning you had people holding your hands on either side as you walked over. But as you got experience of walking over it, and as you saw lots of other people walking over it and experienced that nothing happened to them, you get faith that you can walk over the glass floor and you will be safe. Or if you didn't have the experience of it, we could mathematically again have calculated your body weight and looked at the mathematical properties of the strength and thickness of that glass and what weight it can bear, and mathematically prove to you that there's no way that a human could crack that glass. So there's two ways that one can get the faith. Now, the one through experience is often called experiential verification through experience. Now, there are many spiritual people, highly developed spiritual people, who have experienced a connection with God. They may do it through meditation. They may do it through chanting. They may do it through praying. They may do it through singing of hymns or various other activities that allows them to connect And so they've got experience of that connection, so they get their faith from that. And then the other way to get it is through, of course, knowledge, through scripture, handed down from God himself. Now, to the person who does not believe in God, experiential verification is not possible, is it? If you think about it. I mean, how could you experience not God? How could you experience a connection whereby the connection would say, I don't exist? Then, of course, God would be existing. So experiential verification of not God can't happen. The only experiential verification that could happen would be if God did exist and you connected. So that's experiential verification leading to faith. Now let's talk a little bit about the other one, the knowledge pathway to faith. If we look at Romans in the Bible, chapter 10, verse 17, here is a quote. So, faith comes from hearing, and hearing through the word of Christ. In other words, hearing scripture. In the biblical reference, it's through Jesus. But there are other religious traditions which have scriptures as well. And Krishna has said to us in the Bhagavad Gita that he sends his word to mankind in different ways for different time, place, and circumstance. So hearing from scripture is recommended in the Bible. Faith comes from hearing. Now, faith itself is not some kind of just an intellectual belief. Because for faith to be genuine faith, one has to act upon that faith. Then it becomes really authentic, genuine faith. So I may say that I have faith that due to mathematical calculation it's proved I could do a bungee jump and survive. I may have mathematical faith, but it's not quite enough because I won't act upon it. I've never done a bungee jump and I'm not going to. So the faith's not quite there, even though I've got the knowledge side of it, the ability to do the calculations. I'm not acting upon it. Similarly, imagine there was I don't know if this was imaginary or real, but Niagara Falls and a tightrope and what do you call them, a tightrope artist walking back and forth with a wheelbarrow across this tightrope, and he was fine. He obviously made it. And then he asks the audience, does somebody want to sit in this wheelbarrow and I'll wheel you back across the tightrope? Imagine what the response is. People may well in their mind believe that he has the skill and the ability to do this, but will they act upon that faith? In which case the answer is generally no. So it's not true faith. So truly developed faith requires acting, not just some intellectual kind of faith. So although I say one can get to faith through knowledge, and the scriptures tell us that too, it's not realized faith until one acts accordingly. So in Bhagavad Gita, let's talk about that, chapter 3, verse 31. Those men who, with faith and free from ill will, practice this my teaching, are also freed from the bondage of action. In other words, they're freed from coming back to material existence due to karmic effects. But the part I want to focus on there was with faith and practice my teaching. So that's the idea about you must act upon the faith that you got from the spiritual readings or from hearing scripture. James, in the Bible, chapter 2, verse 17, says, faith by itself, apart from works, is dead. So just intellectual faith that does not have works, in other words, action, in other words, as the Bhagavad Gita said, is not practiced, then it's just intellectual and it's not realized, practiced faith. So there's that to consider. Now, when we look at the Bhagavad Gita, there's an interesting breakdown of faith into three kinds. Krishna says to Arjuna, O Arjuna, the faith of each is in accordance with one's own natural disposition. And Prabhupada, in his purport, where he explains this, talks about our faith being according to the three modes of material nature. And our goal should be to elevate our faith, because there are different modes of faith according to the modes, most predominant mode of material nature in which we live. So, for example, the mode of ignorance. Now, that is the lowest of the three modes. I mean, it's not as simple as saying, well, one person is fully in the mode of ignorance and another person is fully in the mode of passion and another person is fully in the mode of goodness. People have mixtures. So it's more like a continuum. But we want to try and get ourselves to the mode of goodness, which is the highest material mode. Ultimately, we want to get the step above that, which is to transcend the material modes. So that's ultimately where we're going. But you can't transcend the three material modes from the bottom step of ignorance. So even people operating mainly in the mode of ignorance, these people don't have knowledge of scriptures, or if they do, they're very indifferent to this knowledge. And so they're either just not bothered with scriptural knowledge or don't know about it. And they may even believe that they have incredible faith, or try to show incredible faith by doing such severe austerities that it's damaging to the body, which the Lord has given us. And that, even though they may think they're highly elevated, for example, these holy men who sleep on beds of thorns, put spikes through various parts of their anatomy as penance or austerity of holiness. There was one yogic guy who kept his hand raised for years as some kind of sacrificial austerity for his holiness, to show his faith. Kept his hand raised for years. There was another one who gazed at the sun on purpose, gazed and stared at the sun, oblivious to the damage to the eyes. Do fasting until they wither away. We are told by Krishna and by Prabhupada, who explains the Sanskrit text to us in English, that this is faith in the mode of ignorance. This is not the kind of faith that we're after. Yes, they're doing acts. That's not the kind of acts. Now then you've got people in the mode of passion who have some knowledge, but they may wish to kind of have other motivations coming in and kind of twisting their spiritual knowledge and their pursuits for some kind of motivation to benefit themselves. So they may be having faith that if they do certain rituals or prayers or practices, that they can gain something, such as power, money, wealth, position, something for themselves. So it's a kind of a faith for, I have faith, but what do I get in return? But faith in the mode of goodness is where the person has good scriptural knowledge and follows that scriptural knowledge, faithfully follows the scriptural knowledge, and does not have ulterior motives or motivations for themselves to gain anything. So that is the kind of faith that we're after. Now, continuing with the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, text 3, Krishna tells us, the faith of all humans conforms to the nature of their mind. All people possess faith, and whatever the nature of their faith, that is verily what they are. So that ties back to those three forms of faith and loops back to the beginning of this talk where I said that we all have faith. There's no such thing as a faithless person. There are modes of faith. There is faith in the non-existence of God. There is faith in all the activities of your life. You have faith that when you flick a switch, the light will come on. We all are creatures of faith. Now in Romans chapter 12, verse 3, we are told, for by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. To the measure of faith that God has assigned. Do not think too highly of yourself, we are told. Judge and act according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. So that kind of ties up quite nicely with the Bhagavad Gita idea of these different modes of faith. But certainly, when one looks up the explanation of this Romans chapter 12, verse 3, it comes to the idea of we all have certain skills, certain areas of strength, and we can act our faith through those. We should not try to emulate, copy, mimic, or outdo other people who may have superb, amazing skills with which to enact and do works with their faith. Even if our skill is only a little small skill, we should be aware of that. Don't try to copy the others. Just enact and do your works with your faith, with what skill the Lord has given you. No matter how small the skill is or the ability that you've been given, use it to enact your faith and to do works, and try, as the Gita tells us to try to do it in the mode of goodness. Not in the mode of ignorance or in the mode of passion, but in the mode of goodness. So if you have a skill to teach, then use that skill. Teach about scriptural things, scriptural knowledge. If you have a skill to encourage people, you're a very encouraging person, then you can then use it to encourage people down the right path. If you have leadership skills, then use it to lead. If you have kindness, then use it to be kind in the name of the Lord. So we can all enact our faith in the mode of goodness to the level or the capacity or the skill level that the Lord has given us. So to end off, we all have faith. We can't escape having some kind of faith. Our faith should be elevated to faith in God in the mode of goodness with no ulterior motives for material gains. We have to act. Both scriptures agree. We have to act, practice, do works with that faith, not just intellectually have it. We need to act humbly according to our own talents. We are all unique. We are all different. We're all different in our faith, and we're all different in how we do those works and how we act. And both scriptures agree on that. So thank you for listening to the letter F. Next time we're going to go on to G. Still thinking what it shall be with the letter G. Thank you everybody for listening, and Hare Krishna.